there's more to this life than I know about. There's more to this life than the bricks and the mortar and the daily grind that we're working on.
Welcome to the Redefining Midlife podcast. I'm Jo Clark and I'm so glad you're here. And this is a podcast for women who are ready to break free from outdated stereotypes, rediscover themselves, and embrace the endless opportunities that midlife brings. Each week, I'll share expert advice, actionable strategies, and inspiring conversations with incredible women who are redefining what it means to thrive in midlife and beyond. From health and wellness to reigniting your purpose and passions, this is your go-to podcast for feeling empowered, supported, and seen. Now, midlife isn't the end. It's your time to shine, rewrite your story, and create a life that you truly love. So let's get started. Welcome to episode 141. Before we dive into our conversation, I want to take a moment to personally invite you to something very special. It's called Shifting Tides, Navigating Menopause and Midlife. And it's happening on the 18th of July, right here on the Sunshine Coast at the beautiful Noosa Springs Golf and Spa Resort. Now, I'm going to be joined by my friend and past guest, Dr. Sian Hebron, who is a specialist GP with expertise in women's health and menopause. And together, we've created a very special half-day event that's designed to help you feel informed, supported, and empowered as you navigate this next chapter. So, if you've been craving some time to learn more about this stage of life and how to reconnect with yourself, this is your moment. You can also make it a day out with your girlfriends. Now, all the details are in the show notes, and I'd love to see you there. Right. Now, I can't wait to introduce you to today's guest. One of my favourite things to do on this podcast is to shine a light on everyday women who are quietly doing extraordinary things in the middle of life. And today's guest is no exception. Lorraine Garvie has a powerful story to share. From growing up in Scotland to arriving in Australia with no support network, and eventually building a growing business that helps others create the very connection, support, and community that she once longed for. Her journey is anything but ordinary. There have been plenty of twists, turns, and reinventions along the way, and through it all, Lorraine has continued to redefine what her earlier years and now what her midlife can look like. I just know you're going to love this inspiring conversation. Welcome to the Redefining Midlife podcast, Lorraine. It's lovely to have you here today.
Hi, Jo. Thank you very much. It's great to be here.
Now, as we'll discover that your life has had many twists and turns and the inevitable ups and downs that come with being alive. And as we can hear, you don't have the broad Aussie accent like I do. So let's start just in that little spot there. Where did you grow up and what was life like for young Lorraine?
Fond memories. Fond memories. So Scotland, originally in Lanarkshire, and then when after 18, it was probably in Glasgow. It was in Glasgow. I think everybody's got a story, don't they? Yes, we were brought up just very poor. A lot of alcoholism in the family, which then attracts the bullying side of things. So there was all that sort of trauma stuff going through, but at the same time, when you look on the other side, all that poverty and poorness and alcoholism, it really brings you together as a family as well. You get that family unit and a closeness and a certain sort of street savvy that you bring up through your upbringing. So it was a tough upbringing, but it makes you who you are, isn't it? It really defines your path in life and who you're going to be.
Yeah, absolutely. Did you have siblings, Lorraine, that you shared the growing up with and some of the harder times with?
I did. So I've got one younger sister. She's 2.5 years younger than me, and she's still in Scotland.
Gotcha.
So yeah, I've got a little girl of 10, and she's got a little boy of 10. We were both pregnant at the same time, very late in life. So yeah, she's in Scotland with her little one.
Yeah, right. And now tell me what you did post school. Where did life take you? Did you have a career that you were going to be focusing on? Did you decide to travel? Did you get straight into a job? What was your sort of post-school life looking like when you were a young woman?
Oh, I've not even thought about that. It was, I think I was kicked out of school at age 15
Were you?
because I said I didn't need to study, the arrogance of it.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I think I was kicked out and I actually dossed around. And that whole environment, just a lot of dysfunction there. I stepped into that as well. So between the ages, of 15 and 21, I was just, I think I was actually working part-time in a baker's.
Yeah.
I was going in a baker's and doing weekend work there, and I was just drinking alcohol, I think was what I was doing for those years. So there was no path.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was nothing until age 21. And then at age 21, I got a job for the council working for psychological services as an admin assistant.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd gone back to college, actually. I'd gone back to college before that and got an admin qualification. And then I'd used this to get a job in psychological services. And then through them, they gave me the opportunity to go and study part-time in IT. So one day a week. It was just when computers were still in. They had their first Apple Mac computers, and was not like a MacBook that you have now, that's for sure. Yeah. It was the old Apple Macs where you would see the bomb on the screen.
Yes, yes, I remember those. They were a big rectangular prism almost sitting there. Yeah.
Yeah. So they were introducing the first computers, and I put my hand up, to learn about computers. So they gave me the opportunity to one day a week, so over 4 years, to go and get my HND in computing. So that HND. HND in Scotland, it's like if you had a 3-year degree, HNC would be year 1, HND would be year 2, and then I went on to do a degree after that. But they gave me the opportunity to get that.
Isn't that brilliant?
Yeah, it was. It was brilliant. And it's just the nature of who they were. They seen who I was and the upbringing I'd had, and they just gave me the opportunity to further myself, which was fantastic.
And so how many years did it take you to go through the process of finishing your degree? Was that, a fairly long process?
Yeah, it ended up being about 8 years.
Wow.
Because I didn't start then until I was maybe 23. And then I was doing a full-time job and a part-time job at the weekends, and then I was studying for this degree. So it took me years, and then for some reason I had to take a year out, and it was to do with the grants. I can't remember what it was. It was the funding that was available. I had to take a year off and then go back. So I didn't graduate until I was 30. And I graduated, it was computer science. So systems analysis design, software development, ended up doing that. Worked for the council, got an IT job, stayed there. In fact, I was working for that while I was doing my degree. And yet at age 30, I had got my degree, I'd graduated, and I was an IT manager for the local council. So I managed to, climb the ladder, as you say, to realise you get there and think, now where next?
All right, so you finished your degree, you began your career in the area that you studied. So then what brought you to Australia? When did that happen?
So I met a man.
Of course you did, as we all do.
So I met an Australian man in Glasgow, and we ended up, I think I was with him from age 29, and he actually moved in with me. So he was living with me in Glasgow, but he was there illegally. He didn't have a visa. He wasn't meant to be there. And at the time, so he had to get out of the country. And at the time, if I wanted to come here on a working holiday visa, you can only do it below the age 30 or under age 31. That's the cap in Scotland. So the opportunity to pack everything up, the degree, the management job, and everything else that I'd worked so hard for was chucked in the air. And I came to Australia for love and started again. So yeah, we left in a big hurry to come here, and that was one of those relationships. It was just massive, passionate love, but absolutely terrible. Absolutely terrible. So we just went to Melbourne with him, and we just fought for 18 months. I think we moved house 6 times. It was really hard because I had come from a place where, when I was growing up, I was the mum. I was the mum from very, very young age, looking after my sister. And I was always fiercely independent. I was out on my own at age 15. I was working, and then all of a sudden at age 31, I was living with a man. I'd never lived with anyone before in a different country, and he had the car and he had the job, and I was left in his dad's house relying on him for everything. And it was, yeah, I hated it. I hated everything about it.
So how did you then find your feet? You were in a new country without the support of family and friends, without the familiar and a career that, that you'd left, that you were doing well in. How did you then find your feet? Did you leave the relationship? Did you?
I left the relationship after it got slightly violent.
Ah,
And my sister at the time was in Queensland,
uh-huh.
and she was in Airlie Beach in Queensland, working in a bar. So I left him in Melbourne and went to see her, and yeah, just didn't go back after that. So I stayed in Airlie Beach and partied for another year. Lived on South Mole Island and worked in the bars there in Airlie Beach with people 10 years younger than me.
Yes, well, that's it. There would have been a
fabulous
big difference. Yeah.
it was brilliant. But yeah, I did that, but I was just doing bar work. So it was bar work, it was hospitality, it was party time. There was no roots there. There was nothing. We had several deaths in the family, so I was flying back and forward. And then I decided to come to Perth. Now, myself and my ex were meant to come to Perth, but he came here and I went to Queensland for my sister. So actually, in the turmoil of all that, he said, Lorraine, what are you doing? Stop working in bars, come to Perth, have a look, see what it's like, and just get yourself on your feet.
Huh.
So it was actually him that said, come here. And by the time I came to Perth, I had immigrated and skipped state 3 times. And I thought, wherever I land, I'm landing.
Yes.
So Perth it is. So I've been in Perth now for 20 years, 18 years. 18 years.
Okay. And you're a mum to a younger, became a mum later in life?
Yeah. So when I came here, I think I was single for about 5 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think. And then I met my daughter's dad on online dating, and he was a Kiwi, and we were together for 7 years, and we have produced this beautiful daughter who's now 10.
Well,
We're not together anymore. We split up when she was 18 months, but he's very much still in our lives and plays the dad role very well when he's here. Yeah.
Yes.
I say that because he works away. Yeah.
Okay. And Lorraine, with your job then, you sort of drifted a bit when you first came to Australia. Did you get back into the career that you left
when I came to Perth? I was straight back into it. Well, actually, the first job was a restaurant, which is the hardest job I've ever had in my life. I swear. I was in a restaurant for about a year, and not about 6 months while I found somewhere to live and stuff. But then I was straight back into IT. So it was IT support, and then I moved into like software development, which I hated, by the way. And I think that was something I was talking to you about before this. That software development and the whole IT path, that comes from the parents. The computers are in, go where they are. They're going to take over the world. That's where you're going to make loads of money. Go for the computer, go for this, go for this. So, of course, that led me through the IT path and the degree path. So it's chasing your parents' values, rather than your own. So I hated programming. Like, I hated it with a passion. Like, it's just not me. But anyway, I ended up another programming job and then a support job. But this support job, the last one I was in, gave me the opportunity to go into sales. So to go into a sales role for IT. And I liked that. And I thought, if I could sell for these guys, I could sell for myself.
Yeah.
Naively, not taking into account that they've got 30 years of brand recognition behind them.
It's a bit like how you treated school when you were 15 then, eh?
That's right. You're picking up a bit of a theme there, Jo.
It is an ignorance bliss because it that gets you onto a different direction and a different pathway.
That's right. I think I'm only just realizing recently, I think it's a lot of my issues in life have been around being too confident rather than the other way around. Like, when we were brought up when we were young, my mum was just always telling me, because she was a single parent and really struggling and everything. And she went back to school for the first one in her family when she was a returning adult. And she was always instilling in us, you can be anything you want to be. You can do anything you want. And that was inbred into us from very early. And I believed that. That carries on with you. So and I can remember reading the book by Tony Robbins at age 19, Awaken the Giant Within.
Yeah.
And I just thought to myself at that time, if he can do this, I can do this.
Huh.
Just completely naively.
Yeah.
But just not having anybody in life to say, no, well, you can't do that, or you couldn't do this, or, you know, there weren't any barriers for me. So that probably gets you in a little bit of trouble sometimes, being too confident. I've ended up getting roles that I wasn't qualified for, and yeah.
So what was one of those roles that you made?
It was the one in Glasgow.
Okay.
So I became this IT manager, and it was a CAD management role, and it was a £10,000 wage rise, which is $20,000. I went from a support worker to a manager of these 3 offices in the area of CAD, which is computer aided design for architects. And yeah, I just talked myself through that interview. I did my homework, I did my studies, and I got that job. And then found myself over my head and having to learn and pedal really, really fast. So yeah, I'd get myself into trouble that way because, you know, I just thought, that's mine.
Do you find yourself saying some of the same things that your mother told you to your own daughter, or are you sort of a bit more mindful about what message you're giving her? Well, I'm really interested to hear what you do.
I'm certainly encouraging her that she can be anybody she wants to be.
Yeah.
But I think the difference from my angle now, especially, and we'll probably talk about this a wee while later, I've studied the DeMartini work, like John DeMartini, and that whole philosophy is everything is perfectly balanced and has 2 sides.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm this hugely optimistic, confident person, but I would never look at the downsides.
Gotcha.
And never balance it out. And that's why you end up in trouble sometimes.
Yeah.
So even in the business, like when I do profiling, it will say my biggest weakness is over optimism. So I need to bring somebody in to pull my ideas down and talk to me realistically in the numbers side of things.
Okay.
So my communication now with my daughter is, well, that is fantastic, you know, and then what might the downsides of that be?
Yeah.
Or when there's a downside, it's, well, what might the upsides of that be? So encouraging her to be, and there's no rules, you know, if you want to do music, you do music. If you want to do sport, you do sport.
Yeah.
I'm not going down the pushing the academic route at all, like I was. But yeah, probably just as much encouragement, but a lot more balanced approach, I believe.
And do you think that would have held you in good stead when you were a younger woman? That, or perhaps,
Nah.
Nah.
Wouldn't change a thing. Wouldn't change a thing. Yeah. Yeah, it's like even coming to Australia, you're like, yep, let's do it. Let's do it. You know, it was yeah.
Yeah. Well, we'll talk about the self-development journey you've been on, but just before we do that, how do you think being in more possibly male-dominated industries, how do you think that affected you, or what impact, rather than affected you, what impact did that have on you personally and professionally? And do you think that has really helped shape you to the woman that you are today, to the career that you're in today?
You know what? I just don't think it had any impact. I can remember saying when I was in Australia, and it must have been about 7 years ago, was the first time I ever felt that there was a difference between me and a man, which is really interesting, right? And again, it's that confidence growing up, or it's a hard shell. You know, there's a hard shell on you growing up. I didn't feel any different in the IT world or the male-dominated world. I just felt normal. It was never a part of my mind. The reason I hated IT was because I just hated IT.
Yeah.
But I can remember once I was with my business partner, and we were both at a meeting in the CBD, and we were negotiating a deal, and the person that we were negotiating a deal with was only talking and looking to my business partner. And I thought, that's really interesting. Yeah. But that was the first time, and I would have been early 40s before I ever really noticed. Yeah, it's just not been in my experience that there's been a difference between male, female.
Well,
Yeah.
that's wonderful that you haven't seen it as
Yeah.
being a big difference, because for many women, that's not the case at all. That I've, and women that I've interviewed on the podcast have sort of had a different experience.
No,
Mm.
and I think maybe twice in 10 years as well, I've had somebody on the phone and I laugh. What was it? Somebody said to me, and like, in fact, it says twice in 10 years. And the first guy said to me on the phone, he says, "Oh, I was talking to your boss the other day." And I said, "Oh, yeah, who's that?" You know? And he's talking about my business partner, of course, but I mean, I'm the CEO, but he
Yes.
doesn't know that. He just assumed that the male was the boss. And then I've had it another time, but Dean has it the same, you know. But other than that, I just don't have that. I've just not had any of that experience.
Mm.
It's not been in my world in
Oh,
any negative way.
and I wonder too if it's some of that your confidence that you bring to the position, to whatever you do as well, because as you know, you've mentioned a couple of times, it's been another theme as well, is that your confidence or overconfidence in certain things where, people aren't going to question you because you are confident and
Yeah.
become competent at what you're doing as well. So, I mean, you do both of
Yeah,
those.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, certainly. And yeah, it's just never been, I believe it's never been in my energetical makeup. But I've also carried a lot of masculine energy with me through growing up. So there was
Okay.
no dad, there was no brothers, there was no males in the family. I was the mum. So I was probably playing the mum and the dad. So I was playing I was playing both roles,
Yeah.
if you like, for a long time. And then you've got that street cred attitude you need to survive. So there's a very hard shell on there as well as confidence.
Yes.
So yeah, I've never, and if it has happened, I've not been aware
Yeah. Oh,
of it.
well, that's a good thing then if it hasn't
Yeah,
become a big feature in
not
your
at all.
career, in your life. So you've got you've mentioned some of the self-development that you've already done. At what age did you start to go, I'm going to really look at my own life and delve a little bit deeper and learn more about myself, some of the old stories, and create and forge a new identity or awareness of yourself? How old were you then, and what sort of things were you doing to take you down that path?
It was age 19. So I remember I
The
said
Tony
before
Robbins book.
I read that
Okay,
book.
so you've
So
always had an interest.
yeah, my mum had kicked me out at 15, but then she moved to Glasgow and I actually moved back in with her at age
Uh-huh.
19.
Hmm.
And we were broke. My mum was on welfare. I
Hmm.
was unemployed. There was no TV in the house. There was nothing. We didn't have two sticks to rub together. And we decided together, okay, well, let's go and get a job. Let's get a job and try and turn our lives around. My mum was very into improving herself. She struggled a lot, but she was still always wanting to improve herself. And it was her who gave me the book, Awaken the Giant Within. And I can remember writing my initial goals there. And from there, I knew that that was my journey, that was my path.
Yeah.
I've taken major detours away from that because I jump on opportunities. Yeah, it started at 19. But then I didn't really get the chance to do much about it until, well, when I moved to Perth. So there was no one here. I didn't know, well, there was my ex, but I didn't talk to him. So I didn't know anybody. There was no one here at all. So there was no friends, no family. And that was tough in that I can remember saying to myself, well, who will I be?
Mm.
Because beforehand I had I had the role. I was big sister, I was employed, I was a manager, and I was also the main support person for my mum. And now when I was here, none of that was there.
Hmm.
So there was it was very lonely. And I spent all my weekends or any free or cheap personal development workshop that would come up in Perth, I would be there. And I can remember this guy, Chris Howard. He was big at the time and he would do these all weekend seminars. We'd turn up at 7 in the morning, you wouldn't leave till midnight and you'd work on yourself. And so I started going to them. And it's also when I started meditating because I was always looking for things to do. I had nothing to do
Yeah.
and no one to do anything with. So I was reaching out at different channels to see where can I make some friends? Is there a community I can belong to? Is there a new hobby that I can take up? And yeah, when I was in Perth, I had gone to one weekend seminar and they offered us the opportunity to train with them to be a coach. And I thought, yes, that's me. So I flew over to Sydney and I did it. It was a coach for life and business. So it was about goal setting, it was personal development, it was right up my street. And I went and did that. We did the business plan behind it, got some clients really, really quickly again, full of confidence, full
Yeah.
of beans.
Yes.
And yeah, I did that. And for some reason, the people who landed in front of me were looking for help with business. Now, I had no idea about business. I was a sole trader. I was a life coach, personal development coach. I was brand new. I was green.
Yeah.
But all these people were like saying to me, well, how do I get more clients from my business? I'm like, well, I don't know how you get more clients from business. I just get them. So I went and I studied with, there's a group called Mind Shop in Australia, and they are global consultants for consultants. And because I had loads of money at the time, because I was still an employee,
Yeah.
because I was working and doing the coaching part-time, as you know, as most people do. And yeah, I went and studied with them, and they gave me everything I needed to hit the ground. So they gave me the tools, they gave me the confidence, they gave me the coach, they gave me the systems, they gave me the access to people on the phone if I needed anybody. And so I hit the ground running, going coaching people in business without never having a business.
Well,
But that was, yeah, it's a bit of a sidestep.
yeah. Yeah. And you also did, you had in your bio and in our discussion when we talked about the coming onto the podcast, an interest in the shamanic practices and in that world. So for people who have got no idea what all of that means, talk us through how you got into that and what or how you're using that today.
So the bit in between there is, so I was coaching for business, created a networking group to give myself some leads, met Dean, my business partner, created District 32. Now that's now 10 years old. Now, the reason I'm putting that in the middle is because building a business, I've heard myself say recently that the business was sent to me to turn me into the person I need to be to run it. Because you rub up against everything. You rub up against, am I good enough? Is the model good enough? Is it me? Is it the value proposition? Is it the price? Is it me? It must be us. We must have lack mentality. We must have scarcity consciousness. We must have this. What's repelling? Why can't we get ahead? You know. So there was all these questions, which led me to go again, keep going in, keep going in, keep going in. And Dean was the same. You know, we're always looking at ourselves as leaders and what do we have to do with ourselves? Because believer in the external is a complete reflection of the internal.
Yeah.
So yeah, a few years ago, you know, you're still going through the struggles. I think that might have been 3 or 4 years ago, going through the real struggles of business. And I had somebody had invited me along to a shamanic healing session. Now I had no idea what this is. It was an introduction thing. And it was just a small group setting. There was only 3 of us there. And I just had my first, I don't even know how to describe it. I just had a spiritual experience, if you can say it like that. A spiritual experience, you know, goosebumps all through my whole body, tears, lightness in the head. And there's more things in there. But from that moment, I knew there was more. There's more to this life than I know about. There's more to this life than the bricks and the mortar and the daily grind that we're working on. So I went looking for someone who teaches shamanic healing so that I could explore what it is. Now, I went there and I think it was a first 10-day training. And I can remember sitting there and thinking, oh my God, what have I done? Because everybody in the room are talking about, you know, their past lives and their spiritual lives and these healings and that healings. And I'm like, I don't even know what you're talking about. And a lot of people in the room are already talking about spirit guides and spirit coaches and stuff like this. And I was like, nothing. I don't even know idea what you're talking about. So it was really interesting just to be taught around. So this was moving into the energetical realm. You know, it's energy work, it's feeling, it's sensing, it's perception. And it's being able to, I guess, in order to be a shamanic practitioner, you have to be a hollow bone. And what that means is for me to be able to pick up energetic patterns or sequences or healing in you, I need to get rid of all my stuff. So I had 40 years of stuff to get rid of. So the shamanic training in itself is getting rid of your own work, and you're doing that on each other. So we did that for years, just healing each other, healing each other, healing each other, until you're then a hollow bone. And I think the biggest thing that training gave, I really struggled with that training because I didn't trust life. And because I didn't trust life, so all that hard armor and overconfidence that I had all that life was just the protection, of what was really what was really going on inside. So the shamanic healing really started just chipping away at that until, I finally trust life and trust myself and trust my own abilities and trust energy.
Yeah.
So so I spent a good 2.5, almost 3 years, studying and training to finally go through to be a qualified shamanic practitioner.
So do you call yourself a shaman? Is that?
No, apparently that's not cool.
You want to be with the cool kids, so make sure you give yourself the right name.
We call ourselves shamanic practitioners,
Gotcha.
And I think that's the first thing we're taught when we go into the training. You don't go call yourself a shaman.
So that's a
title you inherit.
Did you find within yourself, because you said, I forget the words that you use, basically you reach a point where you're ready. Do you decide that, or does somebody from the outside see something within you to go, she's ready now?
I think that the life has a way of just putting you in front of the right people when you're ready.
Okay.
Yeah, I believe. If I was introduced to this lady who took me to that first session, I didn't know who she was, and that was my doorway. To do some real work, but all the while driven by the performance of the business.
Yeah,
that's all around survival and being on my own. There's a lot of survival around there, so I must pay the bills. There's no fallback. There's no, there's no community here. The buck stops here. So there's a lot of, but then all those old wounds come up around survival and good enough, and so that was propelling it, But then obviously, I would have been much older. I would have been 46 when I started.
Yeah.
The healing journey.
Well, so we'll talk about a bit more of the business that you created, because like with many of us, you created something because you couldn't find it anywhere yourself. And I know it takes a lot, from my own personal experience, of a lot of behind the scenes goes into creating something that wasn't ever there before. So can you tell us more about how your network business group began, how it's growing, and where you can see it ending up?
Well, it started when I was doing the coaching. So I was totally green. I can remember going onto Google and saying, how do I get clients for coaching? And up came, well, you have to do networking. And I tried 2 different networking groups. And I tried to build a group for one particular group. And it just wasn't working for me. It just was not working for me. The culture wasn't working for me. And even the days and the times weren't working for me. And I thought, right, well, I'm just going to go and create my own. And because I want to do it on a Friday, and I want to do it on a Friday morning, and I live in North Perth. So I would really like a networking group in North Perth on a Friday.
Yeah.
So that's what it does. And there was a little cafe next door with a spare room in the back. And I thought, right. And I thought, who do I need? If I do this for free, I said, but who do I need to help me build my business? And I took a list and I thought, I need a graphic designer, an SEO specialist, an accountant, a bookkeeper. So I went on Google and I found all these people in North Perth, and I said, would you like to come along to this networking group? I'll give you free membership. I'll do you a couple of business coaching sessions for free, and we'll do a swap, and we'll start this exclusive professional network. And they did. And they came, and I run that group for, I don't know, 2 or 3 years. You'll have to forgive me with the time lapse. And that fed all of my leads, all of my business opportunities, speaking opportunities came out of that. There ended up, being 28 to 30 people meeting every 2 weeks. And I'd have to keep moving to bigger venues. And yeah, that's how it all started. But then my business partner, Dean, cold called me when he arrived in, so he's from Ireland, and
Uh-huh.
he arrived in Perth, and he's in sales. So he knows that the best way to make sales is to network and to find someone who's already got a network. So he knows he just needs to build a relationship with me to get access to a network rather than doing the hard yards himself.
Yep.
So this is like, this story is like networking 101 though, right? Because he knows that that's how it works. He cold calls me, I meet him, and we try and do some joint ventures. So he was a specialist in sales, I was the specialist in marketing. I tried to refer him work, he tried to refer me work, and it wasn't working. And it's because we realized business owners couldn't afford everything. They couldn't afford the networking and the training and the coaching. They couldn't afford a marketing consultant and a sales consultant. That's not going to happen.
Mm.
So we looked at the model and we flipped it. And we decided, let's make the networking the model. In that room, the magic that happened in that room was obvious. Everybody had access to experts' information when they needed it.
Mm-hmm.
Right? They had a team of people shouting on them and cheering them on. They became friends. And there was just magic happened in there. And we thought, if we flip it and make that the model and then inject our experience in sales and marketing into it, we've got a winning model.
Mm.
And I think we launched it. You have to be careful what you ask for. I always wanted to be a CEO of a company and I wanted a baby, but I didn't want them both at age 40. So I launched the business 9 months pregnant.
Wow. Mm.
So we started just with that one wee circle. And then we went to another circle in Joondalup and then another one in Vic Park. And then before at one point, I think we were up to 18 circles.
Huh.
And then what we realized was, and that's gone up and down, it took a big smash at COVID.
Yes.
It was up and down, up and down. But what we realized then was there was nowhere for people to go who outgrew that model. For people who are looking for something different. All that was available was you go weekly with these KPIs, or you had us that was fortnightly for breakfast. There would seem to be nothing else available. And we wanted to create something really different. Yeah. We wanted something different in the model. So my experience in the whole marketing training was, let's not go out and compete with the same thing. We have to be different. And that was my actual brand before it was Business Reboot, be different. Yeah. So we were looking to create something different and add value. So we then created this maxi tier in the middle, which is people meet once a month and there's like probably 80 people come into the room and it's a massive big 4-hour event every single month. And we do speed networking, there's keynote speakers, there's group mentoring tables, and it's just an amazing community. And then of course, now we've also got the 7-figure network as well. So we've got a pathway to growth. So for people who outgrow the fortnightly, they can go to the maxi, and then once they hit that 7 and 8 figures, they can go to the premium when we do mastermind forums. And so we've spent a lot of time building this interconnected model. We've got massive tech platforms and mobile apps and resource centers now. But what it's really become now is, yes, there's networking, but it's like a business growth community. There's lots of education. And not just about networking. So the education is about sales, marketing, lead generation, customer service, AI, PR, systemology, and bringing all those experts together really creates I don't know. I used to repel against the word club.
Yeah. Because
it was too soft for me where I was in my journey and my vision. But it is actually a little bit like a club.
Yeah. So now you've gone from where you first started in a small cafe near where you lived or beside where you were, to now branching over and taking it internationally. That's massive.
Yeah, and it's been, and again, it's we didn't even plan it. We've been speaking about franchising before, but we were just never ready. You get involved in the hustle of business.
Yeah.
And then someone invited us to go over to the Gold Coast and start running some meetings. So we did. And then from there, someone offered to buy that from us as a franchise. So we went and got franchise ready. And in the process of being franchise ready, a contact from India said, can we roll out your model in India? And we'll work with you. We've done it with all these other brands. And so we thought, okay, well, let's do that then. so we've got these partnerships arrangement in place, and then we sold the first one on the Sunshine Coast, and now we're talking to people again about the Gold Coast, Brisbane, and Melbourne. And the partners in India should be another conversation this week. But it's just, Dean and I often say to ourselves, it's as if it's got a life of its own. We're just the stewards.
Yeah. Okay.
We get put in situations where we're forced to grow and we're forced to move here. It's like it wants to grow.
Mm-hmm.
It wants to grow, and we're its stewards. So I know that might sound a bit strange, but it's just how it is. It's not been, yes, we've got a plan now, but we did not plan to do what we did when we did. We just responded to opportunities that landed.
The interesting thing is, Lorraine, you haven't limited yourself. And that's what I think so many people in all aspects of life. So we're talking about your business now, but I think if you put that into other areas of the context of each and every person's own life, often there are those limitations, those ceilings that we place on ourselves, and we've reached that. That's as good as it's going to get. Whereas it sounds with what you've done with your business and the model that you've got, there is no ceiling. It's just let's see how far it can go.
That's just the mindset. We've got this problem. Okay, well, what do we want to solve, and how do we make that work? But indeed, Dean's the same. We're always been, let's go for it. Just let's go for it, and let there not be limits.
Yeah.
If a door opens, let's take it. Let's compete with the people who've been here for 40 years successfully worldwide. Let's compete with them.
Yes.
Why not?
Well, what have you got to lose? What have you got to lose? Yeah, absolutely. That's exciting. So you're wearing so many different hats in your career now, as a woman in the middle of life who is in her 50s now. So
50.
What are you loving doing the most? Like, what really lights you up?
So if you had to look at my value structure, my top 3 values would be spiritual growth and development for myself and others, and then family, my daughter, and then 3 is financial freedom. And the business comes into all 3 of those aspects. So what lights me up now is looking at getting out of the operations in D32 and just working on the franchise side of things and working full time on that. I would love to I'm sort of mapping out the transition for that now.
Yeah.
And I love doing the coaching and the healing. I do that. I do workshops with Dean's wife. We're doing personal development workshops for D32 members who might be stuck on their mindset and their growth and their transition. And coaching and healing I do in the evenings and the weekend, because I get some real joy from that one-to-one side of things. So that really fills my cup.
Yeah.
There. But yeah, I'm really, really excited to see where this vehicle D32 is going to take us.
I bet you are, because you just would not know. You wouldn't have dreamed of where you are now those years ago. And so who knows what the next 10 years are going to be like for you. So it sounds like you're being really mindful and intentional on designing and crafting a life that lights you up, that makes sure that your values are well and truly front of mind. What have some of the biggest gifts or pleasant surprises that you've discovered in this middle of life? Is it those things, or is it something else?
My shoes fit really well. That was an old saying.
Okay.
My shoes,
my own. Literally, I nearly spat my water out.
No. I feel very comfortable in my own skin.
Yeah.
Very, very comfortable with who I am, where I'm going. And that's not from an overconfidence point of view. That's from a deep trust in life and myself.
Yeah.
Is what I'm enjoying now. I'm really enjoying being a parent at this age now, and the stage of growth that I am. I feel, to now be where I'm at and move into the teenage years for my daughter is fantastic.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm just really enjoying who I am and where I'm at in my journey.
Fantastic. Yeah, it's a good feeling, isn't it?
It is. Yeah. What about you, Jo?
What about me? I'm the same. I've created a life very different to what it was 5 years ago. very different. I've been intentional. I have learned a lot about myself in so many different ways, and I'm really comfortable where I am and excited for what's going to come next.
Yeah.
Because if I look back, I'm 57, so I'm sort of further into my 50s than yourself, but I could never have predicted my life just 5 short years ago. I'm really excited for what is going to be coming in the next 5 and not have age as being that limitation.
That's right. It's just we're only 50s, we're only mid-age,
Absolutely.
mid-cycle.
We are redefining or what it can
That's
look
right.
like. And I think for yourself too, having a younger daughter, to see a mum who is just embracing this stage of life, and there's so much more to do and to see and to be, that's really a great role model for her.
Yeah, it is actually. There's
Yeah.
no ceilings for her either.
No. And so then, speaking of role models, who for you is like you've mentioned your mum quite a lot in our chat today. Who else is a role model for you?
I don't know. Who just popped into my mind there is Helen Mirren.
Uh,
Helen Mirren?
yes.
Just because
Yes.
she's on there and she's just being herself and she's showing it all, and what is it? She says one of her biggest regrets in life is she didn't tell people to F off enough. You
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
So I admire women like that are just encouraging us to be real and be who we are.
Mm.
Um, I've got different role models in different areas, like for spirituality or business or female. I really admire John DeMartini. Love his work, personal bit, and just for the sheer scale of his business.
Mm.
He's amazing, and yeah, I don't know actually. I don't have a lot of
Yeah.
people that I would say
One
role
person in
models.
particular, pulling things from different people, their strengths and lessons.
Hmm.
Okay. So what advice would you give to somebody else in this stage of life, to another woman who may be feeling a little lost or unsure of what's next? What would you say to her?
I think it's time for you. It's time for you. It's time to. What I see is a lot of women hitting this age and then they've got the empty nest syndrome and feeling lacking purpose and direction, or there might be marriage breakups. And I just think this is the most glorious time. Can I say that? To have a tragedy or to have something change in your life, and you get the opportunity to be who you are and not who society or partners or parents said you should be. You get a real chance to say that this is your time. Who do I want to be? What do I want to create? And paint that.
Yeah.
And if you have to do some work to get there, then do some work to get there, whether that's yourself or, your career or whatever that looks like. Often we do. So do the work.
Yes.
That's need to, allow you to have that life that you deserve to have. Mm.
It's definitely a message that I bring home, exactly what you've said on the podcast as well, and the work that I do. So it's lovely to hear somebody else echoing those same sentiments, because it is important to remind ourselves exactly what you've just said.
Yeah.
Mm.
It's our time,
It's our time.
our time.
So I often say, if not now, when? It's the most important part. So given that, what are you looking forward to in the next 5 to 10 years, Lorraine?
I'm envisioning that, I'll be exiting the business in 10 years, and, we're building it for that. So I'll be exiting the main business, spending time traveling, writing, coaching, healing. My daughter will be grown up. Who knows where I'll be? I've got absolutely, honestly, I've got no idea where I'll be and what I'll be doing. And that's cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's cool. That's all right. Because the life has got ways of showing you a life that you can have way beyond what we can imagine if we just let it.
Yep.
We just get out the way.
You get out of the way of
Get
those.
out the way.
Yeah. No, none of those ceilings for you in the various areas of your life looking forward either. So, Lorraine, to wrap up our conversation today, the question I always ask my guests is the same one. What do you hope 80-year-old Lorraine will say about current day Lorraine? Mm.
I think there might be a little bit of admiration there, a little bit of admiration for keeping with it, being bold, being true to myself. I think it would just be admiration for keep going, be bold, don't compromise, not compromising on anything.
Excellent.
That's it. Mm-hmm.
Good. Well, Lorraine, thank you so much for coming on today and sharing your incredible story. And thank you also for being an inspiration and showing us that there is so many things that we can look forward to in our lives, just to stay open, to learn more about ourselves and to take those risks. You're a great role model in that as well. So thank you.
No, thank you very much, Jo. I really appreciate it. It's been really nice to sit on this side of the interview seat. So thank you very much. I've really appreciated it.
Oh, absolute pleasure. Have a great rest of the day.
Thanks, Jo. Bye.
Thanks so much for spending your time with me today. I hope you feel inspired to make the next chapter of your life the best one yet. And remember to share this episode with someone else who would love it and connect with me on Instagram or LinkedIn at Jo Clark Coaching. All the links and the details from today's episode are in the show notes or at joclarkcoaching.com. And if you enjoyed this episode, please follow or subscribe this show on your favourite podcast app and leave a 5-star rating and review. This helps more midlife women find these empowering conversations. I can't wait to chat with you next week. Until then, take care and keep creating a life that you love.